I was reading about intuition and I read a phrase, very interesting, that the meaning of intuition is something that your body can feel before your brain. So sometimes when you're selling something, you just feel that it's gonna have success on the next stage or not.
It's kind of like this inspiration and transpiration. I would say you gotta have the inspirational part and you gotta just sweat your shirt together.
Hello and welcome to Brazil is Not for Beginners. Today my guests are Gustavo Ruiz and Gustavo Zago, the co-founders of Caccao, an early-stage startup focused on low-cost customer acquisition. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Isaac. Thank you for the invitation.
Hey, Isaac.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Zago, I'm going to call you because you have the same first name. We're going to go with Gus and Zago, just to make sure that we know who we're talking to and who is talking here. Gus, we met, 4 or 5 years ago when I started my startup. In all transparency, you came in as an angel. I lost your money, but we were able to stay friends, which is something that I hold very dear. And since that time, you've started on your own entrepreneurial journey and roped in Zago here to be your partner in crime. And so I'm really excited to chat with you guys about this early stage process. You guys are still looking for product market fit, making decisions in ambiguity, using that gut feeling that entrepreneurs need to develop and understand. And so really excited to dive in here, but maybe to start, it would be great if both of you, and Gus, maybe you could share a little bit about your background and how you came to be entrepreneurs.
Cool, thanks. First, thank for the opportunity to be your angel. It's also a learning process, and we really understand that it's a risky investment. So, of course, we are friends. We are here. So, my background is mostly connected to the finance industry. I started my career working in one of the maybe biggest players in the financial segment. It was Hedging Grifo, which is a big broker dealer that was acquired by Credit Suisse. After that, I went to work in Credit Suisse, especially with sales. Later then, I went to work with more familiar company, a smaller company. I started to touch more the entrepreneur life. It was a software company, a data software company. Later then, I went to work as a sales guy in a neobank, and I'm talking about 2017, around that. And later then, I went to a Warren, where I was invited by the XP co-founders to join as their early employers from the company, and where I stayed for around 6 years, I would say. Later then I went to work in an American company, data company, and then I came back to Brazil to start building Caccao. And that's it, a little bit about me.
Excellent. And you, Zago.
Yeah, hey, so thank you again. And just a quick background, actually a mechanical engineer trying to work in the technology field. I did that change in the career like almost 10 years ago. And this is my second startup as a founder. My first one was a crypto exchange called Elliott back in 2017, 2018. That exchange got acquired by Warren. And yeah, I stayed over there at Warren the technology part and product part. I got out. I went to some other companies. One of the big ones was Cirque, which is a big fintech here in Brazil. It's kind of like almost a unicorn. I stayed over there in 2 big projects. I participated in the Drax development, the Brazilian CBDC, and in the liquidation. And yeah, my background is mostly infrastructure for the financial markets. But right now, I think we are working in a more enticing problem, which is customer acquisition. Financial infrastructure is kind of boring once you learn it, and it's different in a good way. So yeah, here we are.
Excellent. So you both have had the experience of early stage and formalized companies, shall we say, or normal traditional companies, and you've chosen the painful path of going back to the startup early stage process. So I want to hear a little bit more about that and the decision that you guys took to leave these more secure jobs, to leave this more secure situation and head out on your own again, raise capital, find investors, build something from scratch, try to solve a real problem. So maybe starting out, can you give us just a quick snapshot of what you're building right now with Caccao? So we talked around it, this customer acquisition challenge. So what is the challenge that you guys are trying to solve and how are you trying to solve it?
Yeah, first, the name Caccao came from 2 things. Basically, my mother has a chocolate factory and we are in love with chocolate in my family. So I want to build something that connect family and Brazil. This was the main meaning about the word Caccao. But also we could connect our main proposal, which is reducing CAC, the cost of acquisition of clients inside the word Caccao. So we put the CAC and cow in the end. The O is not a O, it's a zero. So it means that it's CAC to zero. So actually we are building a software that can build a B2B network. So inside a company, for example, you have individuals such as investors, LPs, also the team members, that these people have some network. These people have some space where they interact with other people. And all this data is not being used by the companies that they are connected to. So we provide an AI platform that can understand all this data, that can organize all this data and help the company to find better ICPs, better sales, and better people to outreach in a more warmer path. So we help them to reduce basically the no ghosting that we understood that is a big problem in cold outreach, especially in B2B segments and software companies here in Brazil. We started here in Brazil and hope in the future we can bring the solution abroad.
Amazing. How long have you guys been at it with Caccao for? So when did you guys first start this entrepreneurial journey?
We actually start talking about the idea last year in January. I think I jumped off of my past job and I started to think what to do and how to do. And basically the idea to build something by my own started in January. But I really don't believe doing something alone. So I was trying to find someone crazy as me to build something together. And thanks God, I could find Zago. And we incorporated Caccao in July, last year, July. So we spent almost half of the year thinking on the thesis, how we're going to finance the thesis, raise capital. So finding the team. So this 6 to 7 months, we spent almost all together thinking on how to do a quick start.
Zago, how did Gus convince you to jump in here with you? What was his sales pitch, or were you just looking for the first not terribly dumb idea you could hear about to go do something?
No, he's just an excellent sales guy, right? He sells everything. But no, actually, I got kicked out from Cirque like in March 2024. And I went back to the market. I was already having some other ideas and I couldn't see myself again, like going in the same route and have to go to the corporate ladder again. I was just trying to go for the entrepreneurial route again. And actually, we met. It was kind of random. As we said, like we met the first time in Warren, right? We worked like maybe 6 years together, something like that. And we met here in São Paulo in the trip that I came here. And we spoke like about some different ideas and just things happen like more organically, right? So we continue meeting and we align in the ideas. And one thing that is pretty important, right? Like we had like similar life moments. Like in our age, we are 30 plus, right? So, I mean, we can still risk it, but we have to think about some other stuff, right? So we had a window. It needed to happen like for us to come together. It was just great timing, I guess.
Amazing. Yeah, that window is really important to know your capacity to take on the risk and to find people that are in similar moments to do that. I think a lot of people start out the journey and don't know necessarily what's involved or how long it's going to go or what they need to set aside. And so to make sure that you have people that are aligned with you on that is really important. And I think finding the right co-founders is also really important. And I've seen some stuff written about kind of how do you find your co-founder and, are you friends or did you go to school together or have you actually worked together? And kind of the ability to bet on founders that have real working experience together is something that pays off because they understand how the other person works. They know how to deal with problems. And I find that really interesting. And so amazing that you guys were able to connect, even if a little bit serendipitously, to start this. And, one of the things that you have to do early on, especially, is just take a lot of decisions based on information you don't even have, right? So I'd love for you to walk through some of the ideation phase, how you guys came up with these ideas. And I know you're still working through it and I want to get to that. You guys have pivoted already and I want to get to that, but talk me a little bit through the ideation phase and what went into it for you guys in terms of settling on what were the ideas that you wanted to go after? What were the theses? What did you use? What did you measure? Obviously stuff based on your experience, but just talk to us a little bit about that ideation process.
Okay, I can take this and Zago can add something here. But I think, especially in the United States, you have those lists where funds provide like the best ideas of the world, the best ideas of the year. And maybe this playbook works in big markets, but in Brazil, I think we have some differentiations. The market's not that big. Maybe you have only one chance to test things, such as the point as reputational side of testing and pivoting. Pivoting here is not a good thing as in the United States, for example. So I can say started things based on real problems that we we lived in our lives. So for 18 years, I would say that I am trying to sell something to someone, and I know how hard and how it's being harder to sell something to someone nowadays. The channels are being flooded. People don't answer you. People don't trust you. So we suffered a lot, I think, in our past jobs, trying to dominate the distribution and trying to dominate the selling part. Because without selling, you cannot do anything. You don't have money, you don't have capital, you cannot finance your growth. So I think we started thinking on things based on our past experiences, based on our knowledge, and based on things that we really believe that we thought it was painkillers for companies. So I think this was the starting point. Of course, from this starting point to now, and probably to the future, lots of things are changing. I think this was our 0 to 1 thinking side.
Understood. Zago, anything on your end that you'd add around that and kind of what attracted you to this problem?
Yeah, I would just like complimenting a little bit. I don't know. For me, it was kind of like a combination of things, but I guess like curiosity is just the thing that got me more involved, right? Like a trading system should work, about like specific financial stuff, how this should work, how this should function. And one thing there was always, I had problems with acquiring clients for my products, but I never like figured out how to do it. And so I guess like we were now in a phase that we could actually figure out some stuff. Like how do you actually acquire clients and how that works, right? Like what's the science behind it? I need to know like the input and the output. And
You're a mechanical engineer.
yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer. I need to know like the squares and everything, right? So yeah, just like out of curiosity, how do we actually get clients and what are the methods to do that? And how do we scale that? And how do other people can consume that? It was just like, this really drives, right? So like just solve like this kind of a problem, which is a problem that I had, which is a problem that Gus knew how to solve in a more one-to-one, and it kind of mixed together, right? Like, so how does he do it? How should we do it? And how do we scale that? And that's the thinking on my side.
Excellent. And so you talked there, both of you, about this, how do we do it? How do we figure it out? What are the inputs and the outputs? And so coming back to the first part of the question I asked is a lot of times you're making decisions without much information, right? You're trying to learn. So how do you think about that decision-making process? You don't have enough data. You don't know the full outcomes. How do you think about the process of testing and the process of making decisions based on the results, even if they're somewhat incomplete? I don't know if that's too broad of a question to ask at this point, but maybe thinking about that process. And then also, if there's any examples where you've kind of had to do that recently, right? Like incomplete information, had to make a decision and go with it. So go ahead, Sago.
And the thing that you said, like the scarcity of information, right? You got to make like decisions based on time, right? So if you had like all the time in the world, you could gather all the information that you needed and you can make like a very educated decision, right? So you can just think about this problem just being like a time problem more than a data acquisition problem. So, and if you have like this time, you need to optimize this time to get the most information that you can and to make a decision and actually mix that with your gut feeling, right? So this is how I think about it. And I guess this goes in that way too, right? So giving you like a real example, right? So we decided to throw away the first product that we did and we need to pivot, right? So let's talk to the market, let's talk to the people. But we need to do that in a very specific time frame, with very specific goals, with very specific questions to inform us of our decision, right? So we're not just like deciding based only on gut. We try to gather most of the data that we can and actually make a decision for that. So that's how we decided the direction of our product. We didn't have the complete picture. We didn't know if the customers were going to buy it. We didn't know the solution. We thought of the solution like much later. We knew the problem. We knew kind of way like to solve it, but not the solution, like the platform and everything, right? So we did the pivot. We terminated all the other clients. And yeah, we did that like it was like less than 30 days. We did all that. And answering your question directly, just get as much data as you can and pick a time frame and stick to the time frame. This is very important. And yeah, go for it. Just you got to risk it sometimes.
Yeah, I think the point about sticking to a time frame is important there, but Gus, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah. Zago is the engineer, so he's always pushing me. Gus, do it that. You need to follow this. Put numbers in this file on this Excel. Of course, I will do that too. So I can add on this time frame, which Zago is, I think, one of the best ones that could do that. I can add some intuition maybe to all these processes. I was reading about intuition last days, coincidentally, and I read a phrase, very interesting, that the meaning of intuition is something that your body can feel before your brain. So sometimes when you're selling something, you just feel that it's gonna have success on the next stage or not. So I think, especially in the beginning of something you're building, the intuition is a very core skill that you need to have, because the lack of data is a lot, but at the same time you can test lots of things, and inside this framework where you should follow the boundaries, even if it's cash or if it's time, you can test things a lot and feel something. So in our first product, Zago, you will remember, since the beginning we knew there was something weird. We were looking to each other and saying we need to find another way to do something like that, or we knew there was something that we couldn't explain with our brain, but we can feel maybe with your body. So I think sometimes when the lack of data is high, you can compensate testing a lot and putting a bit of intuition on top of that. I think it will help you to decide things.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. And I liked the way you talked a lot about the testing and the kind of rapid testing quickly. Zago, you talked about you did that all in 30 days. Gus, you talked a lot about, testing as quickly as you can, testing a lot. And so I remember with my startup, one of my angels talked a lot about your job is to de-risk things. You're a testing factory. You just need to come up with hypotheses and test them as quick as possible and constantly try to de-risk the problem or the uncertainty around the solution that you're trying to bring. And so I think you regularly don't know things, but what can you know? What can you learn quickly? What can you take away? And you guys mentioned the pivot. And so I want to come back to that. Gus, you said maybe it was intuition that led you to do this, but you guys originally built a different product. You had paying customers, you had some traction. What made you realize, and again, maybe it was just the intuition, what made you realize that it wasn't going the right way? And maybe more importantly, what kind of gave you the courage or the ability to make the decision to say, hey, we've got paying clients and we're kind of heading in a direction, but it's not going where we need it to go, and we're going to change this up?
You want to start, Zago?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because it kind of started when like that the thing that you're building, it's kind of something that customers like want to use, then they start using, then they churn, right? So we started to see some signals like that, like from our part, looking more at the analytics part. We started to see some bad signals coming from the customers from all directions, right? They were paying, but maybe they are not. They're trying to negotiate things. And the signal there is that like they were not seeing value on the stuff that we are doing. They could see like we had a good proposal, we had a good team. Most of the customers that were paying like in the beginning, they wanted to get close to us, but like the solution was not really a solution for their problem. Like, so that's the way it started, right? So then we tried to translate that a lot. And there's a pretty long report that we did here about product usability to actually see what their customers were doing, like not just what they were saying, but actually see all the data that we could. And yeah, I guess it came down to like some hard conversations that me and Gus had about like what we were doing, where we were going, and how was things looking up, right? So Gus said like another thing that was really important, that we have the time frame and we have the cash frame too, which is something that you have to consider here. So yeah, it was not something that we were like seeing ourselves do for the rest of the frames that we had. So that, I guess, is where we started, in some really, really, really long conversations that we had, like here in this office that I am right now. And then we came with the team together and we decided like more in a collaborative way to pivot and then to go to another direction. But I guess this can complement a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think most of the time we are taking decisions with not much data we want. But when we understood that we have enough data plus the pressure, cash pressure to take a decision, we took the decision very fast to pivot. So we took a decision in maybe 1 week, but it was based on data, right? We are a very data oriented company, I think, compared to average companies in our age. So we started selling things on January 2025. And in March or around May, I would say, we already had 100 clients. All came by founder led sales and basically organically.
Yep.
But it was hard to sell. It was hard to find people. So the selling part was an issue for me, in my vision at least. It was hard to scale sales. And we heard that coming from some funds and VCs that we spoke during the fundraising too. So that wasn't kind of new for us, but this was the first reason we pivoted. I think the second reason came from when we stopped selling and we started to analyze the customer behavior. How many logins the user made day by day, how many hours the user spent on the application. We started to ask people if they were using us as a mission critical platform during their days. So we understood that we weren't in the main stack of our core users. So with that was enough to understood that we needed to pivot. But I think we made the right decision.
Yeah, I really commend you on that because it's not an easy decision to make as well, right? Because it was kind of going, it's easy to rationalize. You sold the vision to your investors, you sold the vision to your team. If I can ask, and I do really appreciate you guys having an honest and transparent conversation with me about this stuff because I don't think that we do have this conversation about the challenges of early stage. But what was it like talking to your team about this? And what was it like talking to your investors and your clients about, hey, we're going to do something different?
Yeah. The fear always come before you do that. But when you do, you see that you took the right decision. So internally, our team is small. We have only 10 people working at Caccao. So it helps for you to communicate things. But even that we had a small team, me and Zago, especially Zago, which is a guy who really understands how to connect people and helps me a lot on that. We didn't want just to notice people that we are going to do a pivot. We took some time to educate the company and to understand how this could be a benefit for us. So we are trying to find some articles in the internet and we read the post hog article about how many pivots they did before finding the right way. So we started to give these kind of tools for the team to understand how this movement could benefit us. So I think for the team was kind of natural because the team was on top of the data and the KPIs we were monitoring in terms of usability too. So when we mix the education with the data we have, I think we could reach the transparency thing, which I think it's very important for these critical moments. So internally, I think we could manage this situation very well. Of course, unfortunately, needed to fire people, reduce burn, and make the runway longer. This is the hard part, but it needs to be done. And externally, we have 25 investors. So it was kind of hard to talk about that because usually they are too close to you to understand the
Yeah.
challenges and what you're doing. So you need to explain the whole story, why you're doing that. So it was kind of, how can I say, time consuming.
Yeah.
But they understood. As an investors, I think most of them understood and they are with us. So
Yeah. Zago, anything that you'd want to compliment there about this process and
Yeah, maybe a little bit about the team. It's kind of like this inspiration and transpiration. I would say you got to have the inspirational part and you got to just sweat your shirt together, right? So when everybody's just working together on something and you kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page, like you really, really, really make sure you don't just send like a Slack message to explain something. You talk to the people, you put everybody on a room and everybody understands and you like actually make sure that everybody understands. I like to make sometimes a quiz after a meeting, not like in a douche way, but just like in a cool way. So I have like a really young hired guy here. So we normally speak to him like, did you understand? Like if he says he didn't understand, we go the extra mile to actually explain that. So this is something like more connected to culture. I think is really important to have everybody just looking at the same goal at the same time. So then it doesn't become just like a problem for me and Gus to solve. It becomes a problem for everybody. And that's where we excel, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I want to go deeper there. And you mentioned it as well there, Zago, about kind of the transpiration and inspiration. But sometimes things are scarier than you think they are. And one of the big learnings for me when I decided to wind down the company was calling up folks like Gus and telling them what was going on and being terrified of being like, hey guys, we didn't get it done. And the positive response we got from everybody was really great and affirming. And I think as long as people know that you're doing it well, I think you can rely more on your investors. You can rely more on your angels early on, especially people that have been down that path and understand what's going on there. They're investing in you and trying to be supportive of you. And yeah, the idea matters, but they're more about kind of trying to help you succeed. And I think I've mentioned it here on the podcast a few times, but talk a little bit more about the culture you guys have been building. Early stage, it's you try to set the culture with the first 10 people because that defines the culture as you grow, but you're managing amid uncertainty. You guys yourselves don't have all the answers. How do you lead in a situation like that? And how do the two of you complement each other?
Yeah, I think we're trying to create something that is not probably intentional. It's something more natural. I think culture, and I heard that from Alan. You know Alan very well. He was one of your investors. In one of the early days from Caccao, we were talking about culture, and he said something that really piqued me. Culture is not something that you write in the walls. It's something that you say every day and you do every day in your little activities. And
The decisions you make.
yeah, and it's what stays when you're not in the room based on these activities. So before building Caccao, I was like imagining creating walls with beautiful worlds. And I saw that culture is something that creates empathy. Empathy, I think, helps you to put people aligned to find the answers together. Because if we knew every answer for everything, we wouldn't need them to be with us in the battlefield. So I think when you show the direction, but you also show people that you are shooting with them, I think they create a mode and they help you. And as a CEO, as a founder, we just need help. We just need people thinking with us. So I think from my side, this is something that I really care.
Amazing.
Yeah, just complementing a little bit there. I guess two things that we do really good. We have like kind of a culture of extreme communication. We communicate a lot, and we actually prefer that from the contrary. And if you think about it, like the company is like a bunch of people, bunch of nodes that interconnect to each other. And I actually try to incentivize a lot of people to talk with each other, right? It's like that talking to the other person, even if they are not doing specifically right now something correlated, but they need to talk, they need to know each other, they need to understand each other on a more personal level and actually communicate directly, which is just like talking, and indirectly, which is like your a small thing as your Slack status. It needs to be right. So if you're not available, please say that you're not available, right? So this helps a lot. And I guess this is the main pillar, right? We talk a lot and we make sure everybody understands everything and everybody knows what needs to be done.
Yeah, I never update my Slack status, so I think you'd get upset with me, Zago. I'm also always available, so maybe that's the problem, and I need to tell people that I'm not. But how do you guys think that you've kind of learned and grown through the pivot process, through some of the early stage here? How have your leadership styles changed maybe in the last year that you guys have been working together, especially through this pivot?
I don't think it changed in the macro way, but I think especially the relation between me and Zago. Of course, we worked a lot together in our past job, but it's different when you have 100% aligned with your co-founder. So you need to trust and know each other. So I would say in our level every day and things get even better in terms of relationship, and things are difficult. Being an entrepreneur is hard. It's 29 days thinking, looking to the stars alone. But I think with time, we are having more trust in our capabilities as founders. But there was some point, I think, when we started to grow before the pivot, where we needed to hire people. And we hired people that wasn't 100% aligned with our culture. I thought that we could build something that was good for everyone, but it's hard to make everyone happy. So, especially in the beginning, I understood that we need to find people. But as we are living together more than we are living with our families, I think we have to have a very deep alignment on the soft skills and the cultural part and what we like as person and what we see in the terms of vision and future. So I think I will be more strict with the kind of people we're going to bring to make sure we don't waste time trying to make people that's not going to be happy here with our culture. So I think this is something that changed my view.
Amazing. Zago.
Yeah, I guess gotta say that all. I mean, it's kind of harsh to hear, but that's actually the truth, right? So if you have someone that's not really finding joy, or maybe not joy, but fulfillment working in your company, and you're not like connecting, it's just like better for you to go on your separate ways. Like we tried, and yeah, I guess that's something that we learned like really early on, which is good, actually.
And they're not a bad person, right? There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they weren't
No, yeah,
for
no,
this spot, right? You can still be friends. You can still,
yeah,
but it's just not a team member for the stage of the company at this point. Right? I think that's the idea.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. Really, Obviously, Gus, we're friends and so talk every so often. Not as much as I'd like, as I think we're both too busy. But I really love kind of the stage that you guys are at, and the opportunity and risk, right, is exciting. Can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the misconceptions that you guys had? And you've worked at early stage companies before, but maybe founding something, starting from 0 to 1. What were some of the misconceptions that you had or that you think people might have about being a founder? I don't know, for example, what are maybe some of the things that you thought would be hard that were easy, or some of the things that you thought would be easy that were hard? You talked a little bit already about some of the hiring practices, but can you guys talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions that you're seeing as you're in this early stage?
I can start with one. So yeah, I'll leave like kind of two words. Let's talk about fundraising, right? So we saw a word like back in 2017, 2018, which was not easy to raise money by any means. You still had to hustle. But I mean, the checks were much bigger. We had like a different scenario, basically for Brazilian companies, right? We had companies do like 2 rounds a year and all that. And that was something that I didn't really understand like in the beginning. My first company, which was Elliot, we didn't fundraise, right? Like we just sold to Warren and that was it. I'm going to say I got it all wrong. But that was something that I thought, I wouldn't say easy, but I thought it was like more straightforward. Like, here's my product, here's my team, give me the money, I'll do it. And actually, Gus complimented that. Right now, I see the word in a different way. So yeah, it's much harder than you think, but you'll learn a lot in the process. It's worth doing if you're building something that actually needs the capital. If you don't, like, don't do it. And yeah, that was something that I really learned and it really changed me. Before the pandemic hit, and I see a different word now. And like right now, to be like a nerd stage founder, you gotta have some structure, right? You gotta read your stuff. You gotta know what you're doing. So yeah, that's what I learned.
Amazing.
Yeah, from my side, I think I'm always learning and understanding that I need to learn a lot every day. So it's amazing all this process. But something that got me during these processes is I love to read and hear podcasts and understand about other people's lives and especially entrepreneurs. And I think reading them and knowing about them, I'll be more prepared to be an entrepreneur. And being an entrepreneur is showing me that there's no playbook. And sometimes you can create your own rules to do something and create your own company. So this is something that it's interesting. I think there's no playbook to follow. And I'm saying we are a young company. We are doing things for just 1 year and a half. So lots of things needs to happen for us to achieve something very, very big. But with this 1 year and a half being a founder, I think I learned that we can create interesting things by our own, creating our own rules and building our own stuff. So yeah, that's the things that I've been learning.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm always, it's a bit corny, but I'm always reminded of the Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so I think being an entrepreneur is a bit like that, where you have a plan and then the fund you were really counting on says no, or you've got to go speak to 100 funds, or the client that was so close to signing didn't sign or said, let me get back to you, or you just lost momentum, or a million different things happen that you didn't count on or that you weren't aware that you needed to do. That's another thing is, the first time you go out and do it and you see second time founders raising money maybe more easily. You're like, why are they, they didn't even succeed, right? They failed the first time, but you realize like there's a lot of learnings in the failure too, because you at least know what you need to do, right? And setting up a company, it's not something that you need to do all the time, but there's a lot to that, right? So just understanding some of the basic processes and walking through it is really valuable. But you mentioned, Gus, you guys are at an early stage. You guys have been in it for 1.5 years. You pivoted recently. I think you guys are starting to find some traction on that pivot and some positive signals. What excites you most about the point that you guys are at about your stage? What is exciting? What is driving you guys? And if you can be so candid, maybe what are some of the fears at the same time? What kind of scares you?
I think there is maybe two things that excites me the most. I think the first one is that I am very connected to the problem that we are trying to solve. Maybe I'm 18 years selling things, so I know that if we can crack the code and help others to sell, they will be very happy with us and probably they will pay lots of money for us. So I think we are trying to solve something very core for any company, which is conquering the distribution channel. And the second thing, like it's a day by day happiness that I understood that I'm having and fulfilling me is to see that the team is engaged. This is something that makes you happy. Like we are human, right? Such as the team. So we need to enter in a company and see that your trainee or your dev, they are happy working with you and with the problem that you're trying to solve. So feeling that the team is happy, it's always great. And the thing that scares me is if we don't find like product market fit. And it actually, product market fit is a consequence of us not finding the right value of the product or the pain we want to solve. So of course, the cash will kill us if we don't find it.
Yeah. Zago, how about you?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's kind of like a roller coaster because I know that if we go through like this next stage that we are going, we're never going to have like this team again. And like this early stage is amazing. It's hard. You got anxious all the time. You don't know what you're feeling at the given moment. But like, as Gus said, like everybody's just like going through it. And we know when we grow and we will grow, but that's not gonna come back, right? It's gonna become a little bit more bureaucratic and all that. And I guess that's the thing that an entrepreneur has to go through, right? Like right now, we're just like everyone doing and go through stuff. And after that, you gotta become like an executive. I want this moment to come because of the other things that are gonna come with it. But I'm more in my environment, like in the moment that we are right now. You have to balance that out. Yeah, what excites me is just like the phase that we are. I really love it to like just to put something in production for the first time. And yeah, after that, it's just going to be another roller coaster, but we're never going to be like in this moment again.
Yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully you don't have to pivot again. Hopefully
Yeah.
this one drives. But yeah, there's something about that early moment of everybody's together, everybody's going after it. You're all rowing in the same direction. Everybody's bought in. There's something really beautiful about that moment.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Awesome. So technically this podcast is about Brazil. I don't think we've talked much about anything uniquely Brazilian in this. This has been much more about you guys and your journey in the early stage. And again, I think that this is one of those things that founders don't talk enough about or don't hear enough about, right? We hear about the podcasts with the people that succeeded and built unicorns, and maybe we didn't hear from them early on as they were going through the struggles, or it's easy to recount them and kind of understand where they were coming from. Now, sometimes you post-rationalize things as well and understanding in the moment. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and having this with me. But is there anything that you'd say that is maybe unique about building in Brazil or uniquely Brazilian about the startup scene here, or anything that you would share just so that we can at least lay claim to the title that Brazil is not for beginners?
You want to start, Zago?
Yeah, I would start to the most rational thing, which is money, right? So just like it's a boring thing, but we gotta talk about it, like compensation, right? So compensation here in Brazil, it's kind of a challenge, and you have a lot of things to consider about that. When basically you're working with technology, right? And you want to have the best talent when you are working, right? So the best cultural and alignment, and good technical abilities, and it's kind of like an unfair competition when you try to hire someone that is being like is working on a YC company recently founded, getting like $8,000 a month. It's kind of like an unfair advantage that they have over us, right? So I guess like for a super early stage as we are, this is a big challenge. When you grow, it becomes less of a challenge because you have more money, your revenue is bigger, your reputation is better. But like right now, to actually have the team that we have, I'm super grateful for that because it's not easy to build, it's not easy to hold. But I mean, this is like a real challenge. And yeah, for here, it's something that people need to consider when starting something early stage. And I guess one thing that's, I don't know if it's uniquely to Brazil because I didn't like go and interpret their journeys in other places, but like the people that you know here really affect how you do it. So we had some investor, someone related to us, I don't remember actually the name, and he was talking about like going to events because you never know what's going to happen. And he said like, you never know, man, you never know. And yeah, for Brazil is like, you really never know. And it can change like the course of your entire life, just like one connection. I guess maybe that's true for other markets. Maybe in the United States, you can just knock on someone's door and try to talk to them. I don't really know, but yeah, something that I think is kind of unique here.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I want to hear from Gus as well on this, but I think the circle is a bit smaller in Brazil, but I think that that's also in some respect a positive. I find it, again, I didn't build anything in the US, but one of the things that I was really impressed with was the collaborative nature of the startup ecosystem here. And everybody's really rooting for everybody else. You have the occasional person, but for the most part, everybody's really trying to be supportive and helpful to everybody else. And what introductions can we make? How can we be supportive? How can we use each other's solutions, right? So a lot of startups startups start out selling to other startups to, get the product right. People are a little bit more understanding early bugs that come with a beta product or with an early launch. And just in general, I've been really impressed with the collaborative nature and the support that the ecosystem gives here. And I keep coming back to how much I appreciate you guys coming on and having this conversation with me, because it's a conversation that we don't have enough. You do get it a little bit in this community. If you get the right connections and you find your peer group, you can find people that are at similar stages and that are willing to be like, hey man, I'm struggling with this, right? And like, oh, I'm also struggling with that, or, the team this, or the money that, or do you know people at this fund, or just having people on the journey with you and that understand where you are at your moment is really amazing. So that was my non sequitur. Gus, I don't know if you have anything else that you'd want to add there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you and Zago. First, I really believe that in Brazil, relationship matter. You can find better path for you to reach or to talk to someone. And this could, of course, leverage your startup grow if you know someone at some place. So relationship here matter. And despite all bad things that we know that happen here in Brazil, I think the hospitality is a cultural thing that we really have. And people like to help each other because we know that it's hard. We put ourselves in the other people's shoes. And when we understand other people's challenges, I think we establish a equal relationship where we can help others. So I think Brazilians are very open to test things just because they want to help you sometimes.
Yeah.
And because they understand that if they are in a more advantaged position, they want to maybe help you to go after that. I think in the United States, they are more than us. They have this give first cultural thing that we really needs to learn a lot with them. But I think Brazilians has this collaborative way to do things. And another thing that something specific from Brazil is that's why I think I like the name of your podcast, Brazil is not for beginners. Things here can just change from night to day. And you, even if it's unfair, you can try to fight it, but things can change. Like politics are unstable, things change a lot. Someone can change a rule from night to day, and you just need to survive and adapt yourself. So it's something that happens a lot, specifically in the entrepreneurial world. So I'll let you ask Zago.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate it. And I love one of the other quotes that's come up here a few times that's similar and ties into what you said is, in Brazil, even the past is uncertain, right? So things change, they change rapidly. And maybe that I think also kind of breeds an entrepreneurial spirit. But Zago, what does the expression Brazil is not for beginners mean to you?
I guess it says a lot about the people, right? Everybody's kind of hustling if you're doing something that matters. And yeah, that's what it really means for me. And having go abroad and see other stuff too is like people from Brazil, when they succeed, you can see that they're hustlers. They hustle a lot. And I guess that talks a lot with how entrepreneurship should be. And yeah, I guess it talks a lot about the people.
Amazing. And then I always like to end by asking my guests if there's any cultural habits or cultural norms or expressions that you think are really uniquely Brazilian or help illustrate Brazil to other folks. I don't know if there's anything that you guys would highlight that listeners might find interesting.
I guess the relationship. I didn't mention, but I lived 1 year in the US and I had like a very difficult time trying to connect. Like people here are kind of more attached to people, and that really helps in business, in life, and everything. Just like being friendly, someone's gonna be friendly to you, and yeah, people are touchy. So if someone is trying to come here in Brazil, not knowing that, it's gonna get a little bit scary.
Excellent. Gus.
Yeah, I agree with Sago. And I will add something on the relationship part. Brazilian likes to connect to each other. I think they like the relationship part, but also I think this is connected to the trust thing because Brazil is big. There's 200 million people living here. You don't know each other in a good way sometimes. And for you to trust and do business and do something to someone, it's not that genuine. You need to know, you need to understand, you need to know about the family. Maybe you need to invite someone, oh, let's have a coffee somewhere or someday, do business. So I think the building trust is really important in more unstable countries like us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Guys, this was really awesome. I really genuinely appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me. How can people connect with you guys? How can people follow your journey? How should people reach out if they're interested in learning more about this moment of your journey because they're thinking about starting something or pivoting or something else? Or, maybe they're interested in learning about your solution or just following you and following the journey.
I have a open LinkedIn page. Anyone can add me over there, Gustavo Ruiz. And anyone who wants to visit our website, just type caccao.me and you can find us over there too. There's some email. You can contact us over there, or you can join the waiting list. We're going to launch the platform 20th of October, and it's going to be a pleasure to talk to.
Excellent.
Yeah, for me, just like reach out where you find me. Probably is going to be LinkedIn. I'm probably going to answer. I try to answer almost everyone that reaches out, and some stuff for early founders. If you find yourself need to talk to someone, I like to talk to people too and actually exchange conversation. So yeah, just reach out.
Excellent.
Isaac, you saw I was trying to sell something, and Zago is trying to talk to someone to hire someone. So
He's just trying to be their friend, man. He's just trying to be their friend.
Yeah.
The business comes later. Isn't that what you said? Start with friendship? Guys, this was great. Thanks so much.
thanks.
Thank you again.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks again for joining us. This podcast was hosted by me, Isaac Matzner. It was produced and edited by Maria Filmis. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube, as well as on our Substack page. We do love feedback, so please feel free to reach out to us on social media or via email at Brazil4beginners@gmail.com.